with the first participation in research projects and project application. The best stage is yours. Come and tell us. So, Elizabeth's topic is opportunities and emerging issues of handling big data sets in the oil and gas industry in Kenya. You can come here. Oh, she's not around? Okay, so we can have the second one. We can have Susan Jona. Susan Jona is she around? Susan Jona is a geophysicist. She's actual title is a senior exploration geophysicist. Currently working with upstream petroleum department of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development in Uganda. Susan hold master's also in exploration geophysics. That is the University of Leeds. With 14 years experience in the oil and gas industry, she has been involved in seismic data management and specifically private legacy seismic data from upstream media types. Susan also has participated in acquiring, processing, and interpreting gravity and magnetic data in frontier basins in search of additional hydrocarbons in the country. So Susan's topic is on best practices, tools, and strategies for enhancing completeness and readability of EP data within upstream sector in Uganda. Susan, you are welcome to come and present the audience. You have 10 minutes.
10 minutes timer. Timer 10 minutes.
Sorry. Good morning. My name is Susan Jona, and in the Ministry of Energy. And here I present to you the tools and best practices that we have employed in petroleum data quality management in Uganda. Sorry. I think someone is supposed to Okay, this is the outline of my presentation. And in terms of institutional framework, we have the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, and the National Oil Company. And as far as data management is concerned, the ministry is responsible for formulating policies, laws, and regulations that guide the data management. It approves data management systems, and it is also responsible for acquiring geological, geochemical, and geophysical data in frontier basins. And the ministry is also responsible for licensing, and thereafter we do package data for sale. And the ministry is also responsible for managing data in unlicensed areas. Then the authority is responsible for managing data in the licensed areas, and the National Oil Company is the user of the data. And then in terms of the legal and regulatory framework, we have the National Oil and Gas Policy of 2008. We have the Petroleum Act of
Karudi
2013
kuambia
and
huwa
related
napresent ati imefika
regulations that guide us in
ila yeye
managing
nionyeshe
our
huko.
data. I went the other side. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So, what is petroleum data management? It is simply organizing, storing, maintaining, and retrieving both the digital and the physical data in an efficient manner. This data has to be handled in such a way that you are able to retrieve it and use it in order to create value out of it. And what is data quality? Data quality is defined in terms of its availability, accessibility, and usability. When you have data, it should be easily accessed and it should be in a manner that is usable. It should be complete and you should be able to read this data. Okay. Now, in terms of, sorry about the technology issues, but in terms of the data sources, the data that we manage is mainly from two sources. One, the petroleum activities that are undertaken by the oil companies, and then the activities that we are undertaken by the ministry in frontier basins, because the ministry is responsible for opening up new areas for petroleum activities. So we undertake surveys in the frontier basins. And this map here is showing the Albertine Graben, where most of our activities are currently being undertaken. So in terms of sources, as I've already mentioned, the ministry carries out gravity and magnetic surveys in frontier basins in order to open up new areas for petroleum exploration. And here is the data set, in the rightmost corner, we have a gravity and magnetic data set that is displayed in terms of a grid on a map. And then the activities that are undertaken by the oil companies, we have the seismic surveys. And to date, we have undertaken about 34 seismic surveys with an equivalent of about 2,000 square kilometers of 3D data and about 7,000 kilometers of 2D data. And all this data is recorded on the magnetic tape drives, which are stored in a seismic data room. And in terms of data source, we also have data from wells. And to date, we have drilled 121 well bores, which include exploration and appraisal wells. And currently we have development drilling ongoing, and about 107 development wells have so far been drilled. And the well data that we have in store, we have the cores, we have the cuttings, we have the chemical samples, oil samples, to mention that a few. And in terms of well as a source of data, we also have the petrophysical logs. And as I already mentioned that the ministry carries out exploration in frontier basins. We also do geological mapping, whereby we pick rock samples in the field. In terms of management tools, we have the physical data storage facility. We have the core store and the seismic data storage for the magnetic tapes. And in the picture on top here, we have our core store. Our core store here, this is where we keep all our cores. We have the fluid samples and all the geo samples are stored in the core store. And on the rightmost, we have a modern core facility that we are setting up for core storage. And we have about 1 kilometer of cores. And then in terms of physical storage, still we have the seismic data storage, where we have all our physical magnetic tapes stored in boxes. And on the rightmost here, we have the new seismic facility, where we are going to keep our tapes in turtle boxes. And the other one is a picture of the dehumidifier, which is supposed to control the environment where the seismic tapes are stored. And then still on management tools, we have a data center that comprises of servers and the like. We have also a seismic data transcription facility, and we transcribe all our legacy data from the old media type to the new media types. And then we also have different softwares that we use to analyze our data. The GeoSoft for graph and magnetics, Magima for QC in seismic data, Petrel, Techlog, they are all for analyzing our data. And then in terms of best practices, we have the flow for reported data right from receipt up to retrieval. In case there are any issues, we always write back to the company and they submit a better copy of the data. In terms of seismic data, we use the Magma software to look at the headers, we look at the acquisition parameters, and then we cross-check against the metadata that is captured on the physical text. And then for core data, we quality control the data, we look at the transmitter and what has been delivered. In case there are any issues, we always write back to the company. That applies to well-log data as well. We load it in Petrel and in Techlog, and if there are any issues, we can always contact the company. In terms of achievements, petroleum data management has helped us to better understand the petroleum resource potential of Uganda, because we use this data to evaluate the resources, and we always report these figures. We always report these figures to the public, and we also, data management has helped us in promotion and licensing, because we always do package data for sale. And in terms of future development, we are setting up a data backup and the disaster recovery system off-site. We are also equipping our core store with equipment like forklift, petrophysical equipment, and all the necessary equipment in the core store. And we are also planning to acquire specialized data management tools like Studio. And in terms of government policy, when you implement best practices in data management, it promotes transparency and accountability. For example, Uganda is a member state of the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. So when we have this data organized well, it always helps us to handle that role better way. And then also good quality data can be reused in order to discover more, like the Johan field in the Norwegian, in the North Sea, which we have discovered just right from just analyzing existing data. And the unlocking investment in future energy, it cannot be achieved if you don't have good quality data. You cannot achieve the role of petroleum resource that is supposed to be played by the petroleum resource in the energy mix. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Susan, for that presentation. Although you have taken 3 minutes more, otherwise the presentation I think was very good. Of course, Susan told us about the governance of data processes, management softwares, data sources, best practices. And we will have the opportunity at the end of the presentation, if time allows, to ask a few questions. So the next presenter is Elizabeth Chimbuli. Is she around? Okay. So Elizabeth Chimbuli is a geologist working as assistant manager at the National Oil Corporation of Kenya. She holds MSc Petroleum Geoscience at Imperial College, MSc Computing and Information Systems, Greenwich University, UK, BSc Geology from the University of Nairobi. She has a work experience in data information management at the National Oil Data Center, with first participating in research projects and chronology of application. So she's going to tell us about the opportunities and emerging issues of handling big data set in the oil and gas industry in Kenya. Elizabeth, the stage is yours. You are very welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this presentation of this 11th exhibition. Today I have the opportunity to present to you the opportunities and challenges of big data. So here we're going to be looking at how is the industry evolving with this emerging technology referred to as big data. So let us begin by looking at the international wide presentation. I shall look at just a sneak peek of what big data is. So as I continue referring to it, please just have that in mind. Big data is usually structured data, can also be semi-structured or unstructured, depending on the process in which maybe it has undergone. But when we get it from the field, it's usually unstructured data. Normally, oil and gas companies worldwide have data that is in their data centers or in their locations where they keep their data that grows exponentially as they continue to receive it from the field. And with this surge in data coming in, sometimes you get a challenge on how to manage the data to effectively get the value from it. So what they are forced to do is to come up with solutions that enable them to understand what is in these data sets that they have brought from the field, and how can they be processed in a way that they can be usable to other users that maybe are at the end of the end users, who could be scientists or even students and other people, even operators of other of our blocks. So more often than not, we have been given that opportunity to try and see how best we can process our data so that it's more usable at the end of our processing channel. So how do we acquire this data? Most often than not, when we go to the field, we acquire all sorts of data. There's seismic data, there's data from our from drilling. We have also got data from that is well data, drilling equipment, production facilities, market data that is from our customers. We get insights on what they want and maybe how the trends in which which the data gives us. And of course our document repositories, which are the normal reports that we get from our operators once they finish some of their activities in the field and they collect their data. So the diagram there just shows how we process our data. And as I said earlier, the data that comes from the field is usually unstructured. It is raw data, but it has to be cleaned. It has to be integrated into a system that it can be easily accessed. And that is where we have the filtering and the removal of the noise in our data set. At that stage, you can have a data management system which will keep it in that format, which is now semi-structured format. And further processing and integration and analysis will enable this data to be now in another format which is more or less structured. And finally, when the user gets it, they can be able to use that data, for either from the storage facility or straight maybe a real time as they work on it and then they add value to the data. So that gives just a summary of how we prepare our data for use and store for future or archival purposes. Characteristics of big data. Big data generally is defined by the 5 B's. And for the purposes of this presentation, those are the 5 B's that I'm talking about. There's the volume. The volume refers to the amount of data that you have. All of us probably here know that when data comes, it is in large quantities. It can be terabytes of data. It can be file format, table, and other sorts of other formats. And with this volume comes variety of data, depending on where you got it from, which source you collected from. And hence, the variety is defined by the structure, semi-structured, and of course the dynamic data set. In addition to this, the velocity at which this data comes into our data rooms and how fast it is processed is also a characteristic of our data. Reason being, sometimes the data, once it comes, it's in a batch format. Other times it comes real time from the field. So we must be always ready to understand how to deal with these data sets. When we talk about veracity of data, we are talking about how do you trust the data that is coming to your data center? How clean is it? How clean is it? How can you account that it is actually, in terms of integrity, is it good data? Can you account that the information that has come in is what you are expecting from that field, and how much available is it to be able to either add value to it or even access it through your database system. And finally, when you look at all those 4 B's, the volume, variety, and velocity, and veracity, then you get your value for your data. And here with value, we are talking about creating some hypothetical aspects from your data set. You can be able to do some statistics on your data, and even do some analysis that will give you more in-depth information on what you can put into the field. So what opportunities do we get from this data? Of course, once data is managed well, then there are numerous opportunities that you derive as an organization from your data. When we come to the field aspects, we see that insights into exploration, drilling, and production processes are made much easier because your data has already been processed to a level that is either structured or semi-structured. And once you have those insights, then definitely reduce on your costs. That to the cost that you actually maybe engage, have if your data was more disorganized and unstructured. In addition to this, we get better customer insights, the trends, how do they utilize our data, what's the customer behavior, and that gives us good information for our business. Improved risk management comes with the element of having secure data, that we ensure that this data that came from the field, we keep it in a secure portfolio whereby we have those passwords and other security measures to ensure that it's kept first in the way it was brought in from the field, and also the now structured data is stored in a safe manner, which is free from tampering and any other risk that will come through. For the competitive advantage here, what we are talking about is when you get the data from the field, you input it, you process it, and finally you get value from it. Then you're getting a competitive advantage in the sense that you're able to do your analysis faster, and the person on the other end who's waiting for those results so that they can do maybe their research or their write-up can also benefit from that data. Operational efficiency, this one is key where you have machines and you're able to tell when there's a problem with your machine and quickly resolve that issue. And of course, finally, at the end user where the managers are and they have to make decisions, then that data comes in handy because it is already in the format that is usable and understandable, even as someone who does not maybe understand the terminologies and the jargon in the oil and gas industry. So with every technology, there are challenges, and the first challenge usually is the cost, because more often than not, those costs are usually high because you have not been using this technology, and all of a sudden, because of the dynamism of the industry, you are forced to embrace that. So that cost is always there, and as you integrate your data, you always realize that you have challenges in looking at the accuracies and, of course, how best to ensure that you keep your data intact and in a format that is usable. Next, when we talk about privacy, that is also a major concern and security in all data centers. And of course, the expertise that who are going to use this new data need to be trained. We have to train our workforce to be able to understand how this data, this new technology works. So that also comes up as a challenge. And of course, the element of governance and compliance is also key. So anytime you have a new technology you're going to employ, you need to ensure that you comply with the rules of the game. So the data standards come in handy. And of course, when you do storage and management, the data management system that you choose should be suitable to accommodate the new data sets that are coming in, to ensure that you have enough space and to avoid acquiring more data space. And finally, what I would like to take you through is how do we navigate through this complexity. I've listed them all there, I don't go through all, but cost, of course, you look for the one that gives you the highest return on investment. When you're doing the integration of data, you look at a combined approach where you have a visualization, a consultation of data, propagation of the same data, and then finally security, we have to employ the security measures that I've mentioned before, the firewalls, the data operating systems, and then expertise, we train our staff. Change management is also important. You have to prepare your staff for this new technology that you're bringing in, and also tell them how it's going to affect their current tasks, the way they're doing them, and finally let it be incremental so that you embrace it slowly by slowly, and then finally they adopt. And even if possible, have a guide that will give them, systematic understanding of what they're doing so that they don't fall short and feel like other teams are moving ahead of them. And last but not least, of course, the governance frameworks are in check, and then the data management system, let it be a system where you can do inspection, cleaning, verifying, and reporting. And finally, as we look at the challenges and the emerging issues that come up with using big data, it is important for oil and gas companies like ourselves to look at how best we can invest in this technology so that we make, relevant to the industry and the manager of that aware. Because data is one of the most valuable things for oil and gas companies. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Elizabeth. You have abided by the time, just 1 minute of short. Elizabeth was questioned us about big data, precision processing analysis, the value we get from the big data, and also challenges. The next presenter we are going to have a geophysicist at the National Oil Corporation of Kenya. She got MSc in Geophysics, University of Aberdeen, BSc in Mathematics, University of Nairobi. She spearheads innovative research with focus on the integration of renewable energy sources and the impact of energy transition on greenhouse gas emissions. After work includes developing predictive models and the artificial intelligence tools to forecast energy consumption trends and information strategic policy decisions. So she's here to tell us about machine learning in oil and gas data management, a case of well prediction. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Ndio wa kwanza. Ndio hivyo hivyo.
I seem to be on my last slide. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kathleen from the National Oil Corporation of Kenya. There's something a little bit different that ties to both Susan and my colleague and my senior colleague, Liz, has just presented on.
Itoke maiki moja. Itoke moja.
And the outline is pretty much what you would find with a technical presentation, where we have introduction, running
Ama
over
itoe kabisa.
but I'd like you to
Ama
pay
itoe kabisa.
particular attention
Ile
to
maiki
what
nyingine
Marshall
ikisimama.
will be at the end of the presentation. So a bit of an introduction of what AI is. I think many of us have heard one or two things about what AI has been doing. We've all heard of ChatGPT, the latest craze is DeepSeek. So what is artificial intelligence? So it involves creating machines that are able to think and learn and enable them to perform tasks that require some level of human intelligence. And machine learning happens to be a subset of AI that particularly focuses on learning from data, improving on it, and coming up with, or at least in my scenario, predictions of certain data sets without explicitly programming the data set. So what I want to do a little bit different is work on or present my study using a scenario. Many of us might not be familiar with the technical jargon that exists when it comes to machine learning. So I'll bring it a little bit, I'll try to tone it down a little bit so that you understand exactly what this study was about. But primarily what this study is about is trying to figure out if it's possible to predict well or missing well loss based on data sets that are already existing. So the scenario that I want us to think about is, let's try to predict food preference. And there'll be a lot of food talk here, so just bear with me, but that's what is familiar with what we all love food. So let's try and figure out if it's possible for us to predict what type of food someone will eat. So we in this group, or in this hall, the group B. The other people seated in other halls. I'll call them group B and group C. So essentially what I did is, I have 4 wells. You are one well as group A. Group B is another well as well 2. Group C is the 3rd well. So I have a 4th well. And I want to figure out, is it possible for me to predict a certain log that's missing in my 4th well? So you guys as group A, we, as mentioned before, we all love food, and somewhat of food preference might have certain indicators that might enable me to know exactly what you're going to be eating. Age might be one. 21-year-old on a buffet table will eat everything. But someone who's 50 perhaps will be very selective with what they'll be eating. Think of gender. Most ladies will not resist ice cream. I would say there's something wrong with a man who eats ice but we cannot pass ice cream. So another thing that we can also consider as a parameter might be lifestyle. If you're a health freak, you perhaps will not end up eating French fries, what we call mandazis, and for someone who's just into style, they will eat everything. And for someone who has dietary restrictions, perhaps they'll also equally be very selective with what they eat. So that is essentially what I did. For group A, for group B, for group C, combine this particular data. I'd say I came up with observation sheet that this is what my colleague eats. She's of this age. She has this certain dietary restrictions, and I can predict that this is what they'll end up eating. So what I want to figure out is, this is a group B that's coming in next week. I know their ages based on the form that they've filled out. I know their gender. They could be aware and end up figuring out what their lifestyle is because of how their ticketing was done. If someone who was in business class, if someone who was in economy. So I figured out what their lifestyle is. And based on maybe a questionnaire that I gave, I said, okay, I want to figure out what their dietary restrictions are. So I want to figure out what group D will end up eating, which is brilliant for me to plan on next week's food preparations. So what I did is I took the 4 wells, group A, group B, group C, combined those well logs, and tried to figure out if it's possible for me to predict what group D, that missing log from group D, would look like. So essentially, as I've mentioned before, we combine the data, we clean up our data by replacing it in null values that exist. And for my feature selection, what I said, age, gender, lifestyle, dietary restrictions, for me are now on well-log parameters. I used gamma ray, which is an indication of shaliness in the well log. I used SP, which is natural electric potential, which is a measure of permeability to some extent. And there's certain resistivity laws that I ended up using, the deep resistivity and the shallow resistivity law, for me to be capable of predicting what my sonic compression law would look like. And I applied an algorithm called random forest, trying to optimize the parameters. It's a simple snippet of what the programming or the code looks like. And in a typical machine learning process, what you do is you split your training, you have your training and your test data. So for my training data, I split it into, or for my, I split my data set, 80% training, 20% test, just to figure out or validate if my algorithm makes sense. And I ended up predicting sonic, that is the food preference, based on the parameters that I set. And these are my results. For me to actually validate that my algorithm makes sense, I would like you to focus on this, the first graph that is primarily in blue, and you'd notice that the actual, bear in mind that this is what group A, group B, and group C, this is the data that I actually have. So bear in mind that the actual and the predicted are almost correlating to a value of close to 1. So I ended up coming up with highlighting what the measure of accuracy was. I ended up with a coefficient of determination of 0.945, which means that the variation that we're seeing in the well-log data is actually explained with the machine learning model. So that's why you have an almost close to 1 correlation. And use this particular algorithm now to predict what group D would look like, which is my Hothori well. What is the well log? Or what does the well log in Hothori look like if I use my prediction algorithm, which is what you have in here. But what I actually had is I used the algorithm to predict something that that particular data set actually did exist. So what I just wanted to find out is how much does my prediction deviate from the actual well log. And this is what I have for my actual well log. Go back. So what I have, my actual well log is what is in blue, and what was predicted is in red. What you notice is where I have spikes, I also equally have spikes with my predicted model, predicted values. Where I have dips, I also have dips in my predicted plan. So, in conclusion, I'd like to believe that the algorithm did work because I did validate the model. And we can actually use machine learning to fill up any gaps that we have in existence with data. And with respect to financing, at least in the tech space, I like to believe in the energy sector, much of financing these days goes to transition. But I'd like to believe with the new president who's coming, President Trump, we might actually see a lot more money coming into the oil sector. But as of right now, there is plenty of money in energy transition. But another space that most of us have not taken advantage of is the space of tech. So Saudi Aramco is doing it, Equinor, and so many other companies out there are harnessing technology that exists for them to optimize their operations. And in conclusion, there's so many people who think that AI and technology moving forward will completely wipe out some of the jobs that we have. But I'm here to assure you that your job will be non-existent if you don't embrace the changes that we're seeing in technology. So take advantage of AI. My call for action is to strengthen collaboration amongst all of us. If anyone is interested in working together for us to learn from each other, so my call for action is let's work together, because with this type of work, if there isn't any peer reviews out there or like-minded people, then this is not where we are heading. So my call of action is anyone who's interested, even if you know nothing, but you're interested, kindly send me an email, drop me a DM on LinkedIn, and we will work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I think she has been very good in time management, and of course she has educated us around artificial intelligence and machine learning, which is a new innovation, one of the daily challenges in data management. And I'm sure in the future, the challenges we see now will be a case of history. I think another round of applause. So the next presenter is Obalim Alan Joel. He's an IT expert. He's an ICT professional with a Bachelor of Science in Computer Science, that is Good University, MSc in Information and Network Security, Robert Gordon University, UK, MSc in ICT Management, course and Architect, that is Uganda Matters University, MSc in Institutional Management and Leadership, Uganda Management Institute. Obalim is again pursuing a Bachelor's of Laws at Edition University, Uganda, MBA in Artificial Intelligence, University of Columbia, UK. He holds certifications in MSc and ISO IPC 27701. He's a member of organization in ISACA, ISC2, OWASP, and PMI. He has a strong technical project management and leadership skill. I didn't tell you that Obalim works with the Petroleum Authority of Uganda as an ICT expert. He's going to tell us about how to navigate the cybersecurity landscape, security concerns, modeling, and simulating the term data within the subsurface data bus. Overlaying, the floor is yours.
Thank you, moderator. The previous speakers have actually spoken what is really touches me, and what I'm going to be presenting is not a far, but I'll be adding value to whatever the subject has security. That's how we're playing. And so my topic today is navigating cybersecurity landscape, post security concerns, modeling and simulating critical data in the subsurface database. I'll first define a few keywords here because for purpose of efficiency, these words that are going to be defined later on simplified, and we will just keep them. And so when you look at cybersecurity, cybersecurity is more collection of technologies, practices to literally secure your systems or your data or your systems. So to an ordinary person, it's the same. Looking at the critical data, but this is what we play all the time. Now this is the collection of data across the upstream, midstream, and downstream value chains. So you're looking at geological data, physical data, refining data, data from the market. And then of course, the subsurface, we are all on the surface. Now the subsurface is what is beneath us. And Elizabeth talked about unstructured data. Now that is typically data that is in the subsurface. And then the metaverse, of course, this is literally a 3D virtual replica of the physical environment. Now, suffice to note that these are industry 4.0 technologies, or what you refer to as petroleum 4.0 technologies. I know if I can do it on, but juxtaposing this with AI, big data, the likes of NFTs, the likes of blockchain, because the metaverse is likely driven by the blockchain, and we will see that as we progress. So I'll just quickly go to the next slide. So that is the content, but since I've spoken lightly about it, so I'll skip this. Okay, so understanding the subsurface metaverse with that small preamble. Of course, it's a virtual representation, of subsurface, like at earlier defined. And of course, it's an integration of geological and geophysical data. Data that you're collecting below the structure. This is data that could literally use to look at your rock formation. This is data that could look at your geophysical and your geological flows, seismic or the sound waves that you push beneath the surface to literally get a mapping of what your your subsurface data is like. And then of course, it's one of those environments that enable collaboration. We look at the likes of Mark Zuckerberg, who moved or rebranded from Facebook to Meta. Now, these are innovators that are trying to move with times. And this is not really far-fetched from the social aspects of things. But again, when you bring it back home, you will notice that the petroleum industry is actually adopting some of these and will see the different progress. Alright, so the application really, the metaverse can be applied in very many aspects. We look at exploration, developing oil and gas, of course optimizing you have weaknesses, what's your appetite? What are you willing to take, or what are your mitigation regarding the risk assessment you put in place? Is that an area you can invest in as an opportunity? So, I mean, this is technology that can help you assess that. And then, of course, training and education, these are spaces that help you build knowledge. So you keep learning very many things. So whatever you're noticing with the data you collected, like they say, data is bloodline for the sector. So your attributes and characteristics you can take note of when you have this sort of setup environment. And then of course collaboration, research, involvement and the like. Because again, this is replicating the physical space. Okay, so we'll delve into the security concerns. So, like I said earlier, technically security is about three things. In project management, we talk about the triple constraint. So we will just replicate that security. So in security is talking about integrity, availability, and confidentiality. And so with the data that you're collecting from unstructured to semi to structured, you really want to make sure that the integrity is intact. Because this is data that's going to help you make the decisions. And then, of course, confidentiality, you do not want anyone just accessing the data. So there's certain levels of safety. I mean, there's some safety mechanisms you're going to have to put in place to just make sure that data is accessible to those that are permitted to access. I know for us, of course, because of the PSA or with the PSA agreements, there is data that is really confidential, there is data that is open to the public, and then of course it goes back to some data that is commercial. So you do not want, you want to place that confidentiality attributes to the kind of data that you want to expose, depending on the context again. And then, with again security, you have the ability to limit access to sensitive data, what I was saying, and then of course policies. I mean, everything starts with policy, because it's the policies that are going to help you implement some of these attributes to how you secure the data. And of course, we cannot end this conversation without talking about threats. We have malware. Now, malware is malicious software. This is the kind of software or that will corrupt your information or corrupt your data, making it inaccessible. I'll give you a case study. I know you all know about Stuxnet. This was a malware that was targeted towards the uranium energy plant. And this was a cyber weapon. And this was to overrun the centrifuge so that it just collapses, and it was a successful thing. And this happened around 2010. And you need to ensure that your data is safeguarded from some of this malware, because, I mean, it makes your data lose value. And so you can't even achieve your objective at the end of the day. And so malware is categorized in very many forms. You have viruses, you have worms. There's this ransomware where you encrypt your data and then it asks you for ransom. It started here in 2021, around May, there was a colonial pipeline in Texas. What really happened here is that this pipeline was shut down, and so there was no gas flowing. It was a challenge in the States because this critical infrastructure was taken down. And as long as you have digital data, this is an area that you need to protect the data from. And of course, we have inside threats. Now, this is the biggest threat currently, because there are very many technologies out there that are protecting. I mean, they have put out infrastructure. People have been saying they have data centers and the like. I believe in those data centers, there are technologies to protect this data. But now, what's your biggest threat? Your employees, someone who is disgruntled. So again, you need to know how to deal with the staff. So they are the biggest threats currently. And of course, phishing and social engineering, these are very common. someone literally playing with your mind to evolve information. And this also cuts across the very many ways. You're fishing, whaling attacks is someone tries to imitate the CEO or your general manager and then gives you an instruction and you act on it, tells you. Post mishing, dishing. So those are firstly a dealing with. I'll skip this. Some of the best practices we can try and look at using very good encryption. And encryption can be classified with data at first and with data applied. I'll be very sure that if you have data that is accessible over the web and you're not protecting it, for lack of a better word, that would be shame. Then of course monitoring your data, who accesses it, when and how. There are a number of technologies that can report who accessed what and at what time. And then of course also ensuring that you have very good storage facilities. And then of course implementing policies that how do you decommission that data if you're no longer using it. There are quite a number of policies and techniques of how you can destroy data that is not accessible. I'll skip this because I spoke about this in my submission. Of course, these are some of the data regulations in place. We have the Electronic Signature Act, where you use data signatures to protect your data. And this again reinforces integrity. We have, of course, going by the Petroleum Exploration Development and Production Act, which mandates the Petroleum Authority to manage data, and this data is managed on behalf of the state. We have the Data Protection and Privacy Act, and of course the Computer Misuse Act and the Information Act. And then these are some of the standards, like the ISO, the SAT, the NIST, and the like. I'll also skip this. And then some of the other features that we can look at even when dealing with subsurface and the previous speakers have spoken much about this. We have AI. Right now we're in the era of generative AI. Now the agentic AI is also coming on board, where you have aspects to do with the rapid retrieval, augmented realities, quantum computing, there we're headed to, where you have two states or superpositions. And these are technologies that will either help improve your security or expose you. Of course, with blockchain, where you have decentralized computing, and then of course IoTs. Many of us are here, you know what's going back at home for those who are not in Tanzania. Because of the IoT implementation already. You can tell who has access to home, you can turn off your lights from here, you can even turn off your fridge. So these are things you're dealing with currently. And of course, mental security, to say to the list. So these are areas and opportunities for collaboration. I will not go through this, but you will have a copy of the presentation. And I think this is going to wrap up my presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Barim, for that informative presentation about how we can safeguard and secure our data. Of course, he talked about navigation, cybersecurity landscape, application of subsurface metaverse, and security concerns, case studies, and generally know how to protect our data. Another round of applause. So the last presentation is from Stephen Moni. He's a geophysicist. He's a senior petroleum officer at the State Department of Petroleum in Kenya. Stephen holds a bachelor's degree of science in physics from
Ndani kwa vizuri
Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Closely monitors petroleum operations and informs stakeholders about the status of geophysical activities while promoting innovative research programs in the field. Stephen is a member of Geothermal Association of Kenya. Stephen is here to tell us about data management investing, oil and gas data visibility, and accessibility in Kenya for sustainable development. You're welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm a physicist, and I know you are tired of these big terms, data, artificial intelligence, machine learning. For me today, I choose not to engage you in those stuff. I choose to engage you in more lighter content. This is a work that I attempted to solve one of the challenges that we are facing in Kenya. You find that Kenya oil and gas sector, which is basically driven by the discoveries in tertiary reefs, Anza Basin and Lamu Basin, is facing some challenges due to the fact that there are fragmented data silos, there are some technologies which are not as up to date as we might want, there are limited stakeholder access to information. As we approach this data management, there is this aspect of the more complex data, that is the seismic data, the well logs data, logging data, and all this technical data. But there is also the information that we might want our people to see. The person who is on the ground, that is the communities, we might want them to access some certain information which will enable the programs to run smoothly. We want the investor to be able to know what is required of them. We want the ministry to be able to know what the NOCS is doing and the research that they are doing. So that is what I am attempting to tackle. You find that to address the challenges that we are facing here, we need a way of knowing what is happening where. And in order to do this, the objective of this study was to address the data challenges that are faced in the Kenyan oil and gas sector. The second one was to propose a centralized data management framework in order to enhance the visibility of this data. We want to know what is happening where, and we also need to know whether this data is accessible, and if it is accessible, is it the right data that is accessed? Is the data that is more commercial and more confidential secure where it is? Who houses this data? What policy governs the management of this data? We also want to promote sustainable development through the improved governance of this data. If it is being sold, if it is being assessed, we need it to be in an improved way. We also need some good stakeholder collaboration. So how I approach this is by analysis of the existing data management practices in Kenya. I also looked into technology. What is the technology that is available? Here we find there is this big term like the cloud computing, data analytics, and GIS for data centralization and access. We also went into stakeholder engagement whereby I consulted with government and investors and tried to look into some case studies of local engagement, local community engagement, and what resulted and what were the case scenarios that were invoked during this. Also looked into some policy review to try and determine what governs what the law says. Here I found that there are fragmented data silos, whereby you find that not all stakeholders in our industry currently are up to date with what is happening with the other parties. We find that access to these technologies that my colleagues were speaking of, the cloud computing, the big data analytics, is somehow hindered and not up to par due to technological challenges which might be due to financing and all that. So we are not where we are supposed to. Marking this paper attempts to present all these issues so that we can maybe engage a discussion of the process, the approach that was used, the proposed solutions, and how better to tackle our challenges for implementation back at home. So we also found that there needs to be robust data governance to ensure there is data quality and governance and also compliance. Then there's also the aspect of public participation, which is bound to ensure transparency and trust among the players, especially the local community. You find that if the community doesn't know what is happening, and maybe some key factor like land compensation, land acquisition is going to happen, it is bound to slow down the processes and slow down the projects. To ensure that this does not occur, we found that enhanced data visibility and accessibility is very critical for sustainable development in the oil and gas sector. We want things to flow well, we want things to flow in the right speed, with all the parties engaged to avoid conflicts, lawsuits, and all those unnecessary drama. We find that a centralized data management system incorporating all these technologies and strong data governance can easily and will easily address our problems. Stakeholder collaboration, of course, is key, and we found that when the community is engaged, when the investor is engaged, we are bound to reap benefits that we so much require from our industry. From there, we went to the policy implication and maybe the business opportunities that are here. Because, of course, when you correctly tackle a challenge, there's bound to be some business opportunity and some policies need to change. I found that there is need to enhance data governance, the frameworks to align them with international standards. Of course, our policies need to be updated. Some of them are on the way, some of them are on the process being enhanced. I also found that we need to enhance and implement frameworks for keeping stakeholders informed with the relevant current information of what is happening from the agreement, from the production sharing contracts and all that. They need to be updated and they need to be aware. Also found that there is need for enhancing the frameworks for budgetary allocations for technology adoption and policy reviews. I need to be able to empower the person that is at the national oil to adopt the technology that they need, the big cloud data analysis, the cloud computing. There need to be budgetary allocations for them to get the best, the new software, the newest machines, and this should be happening like yesterday. Yeah, and then the other one is that there is need to enhance and implement frameworks for transfer of these technologies that we are allocating to these our organizations. The ones that are aging, we need to create room for them to be moved to somewhere else in order to accommodate newer technologies. And this is being proposed to be moved to the educational institutions, which in most cases you find that they are using technologies that are very old. And then I found that there is also need to enhance and implement frameworks for publication of research collaborations between government agencies and learning institutions. We need to ensure that more research happens, either as individuals or through our national research institutions with the government institutions. Most of the government employees don't want to tackle research, engage into research and do publications, which is something that needs to change for us to enhance and make sure that our industry is better, is more efficient. Yeah, there is the business opportunities that are here, which include investment in cloud computing, analytics, big data analytics, and our people, students, staff with the right kind of technological trainings. So thank you for this, and I welcome your submissions and your views. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, for that presentation, where you educated us about the health challenges in data management, what are the remedial measures, what the policy changes should be done, and also take advantage of business opportunities. Thank you so much. Now we shall have a picture of presenters, and as they prepare to have a picture, maybe just tell you that in this room, after there is local content and social cooperative responsibility, then in the main hall, we have for South and Rift system presentation.
Nikia hapa nataka nitoe video.
Environment, health, safety, and social safeguards. So let us see. All stand for the picture.
Tayari imeisha. Ipo nyingine. Unaweza kumsaidia hiyo kabati lije huko. Hilo kabati lije huko.
Nini?
Nataka yeye nione kabati lije huko dakika moja.
Sasa inafuata hiyo. Majina yamealign.
Chap chap.
Humphrey, Ashilana.
Na nimeweka kunaona.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Can we get organized for the next session? Maybe we'll give a minute or two for people who are moving out to another session, then we'll begin.
Kwanza huyu wa pili, wa nne, wa kwanza, wa pili, Linda, huyu ni wa nne.
Can we all take seats? And apologies if there's anyone who can't find a seat. I think it's held to be seated the whole day. This is going to last maybe 40-50 minutes, and we'll try to be efficient because we are standing between you and your lunch. So, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to this session. My name is Betsy Lamimiru. I work as a manager, National Content Monitoring at the Petroleum Authority of Uganda. The Petroleum Authority of Uganda is responsible for monitoring and evaluation of oil and gas activities in the country. And where we stand today, just to recap from what the Minister and the PS mentioned yesterday, we are at a point where we are working closely in collaboration with the industry and the different companies to ensure that we bring first oil on stream come 2026. I have the honor to invite speakers that are going to be talking to us this afternoon on different aspects as I will describe. And please allow me first of all to introduce Mr. Simon Humphrey, the Chief Executive Officer of Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. Please welcome Humphrey to the program. I also take the same honor to introduce Dr. Achilia Mtengele, the Senior Economist from Energy and Water Utilities of Tanzania, URA. Welcome, Doctor. Thank you. I welcome Engineer Linda Mumuza, Senior Petroleum Officer at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development, Uganda. Welcome, Linda. Also welcome Ms. Ian Omar, the GIS Data Analyst for the National Oil Corporation of Kenya. I don't know if she's here. Yeah. Welcome, Ms. Ian. And lastly, please join me to welcome Ms. Rose Nyongesa Naliaka, Petroleum Technologist from the State Department for Petroleum in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, like we highlighted and as put on the screen, this session is going to focus on local content and corporate social responsibility in the region. As we all know, as we've known from the presentations made yesterday, the different EAC states are at different levels of local content development, and we are running different corporate social responsibility programs as part of our efforts to develop this resource in the region. But what remains significant, and actually what we have substantial evidence about, is that some of the approaches in the development of this resource that take care of local content or the integration of our people in the development of these natural resources have been very significant in terms of promoting economic development even before we see the oil dropping. Just briefly, if I give you a feel of what is happening in Uganda even before oil drops, within the development phase where we've had an investment of, we expect to end with an investment of between 15 to 20 billion US dollars, and this will see value retention through promotion of local content of up to 30%. That's in the region of 7.5 to 8 billion US dollars. When you look at employment, where we are today, we have about 15,000 people employed in the oil and gas sector in Uganda, and about 90% are Ugandans being employed in the sector. When you look at capacity building, different efforts have been put in place. We've had close to 4,000 technicians trained. These are the majority that are required in the industry. These are Ugandans that have been trained to support the oil and gas sector in the country, but also across the region. Also talking about joint ventures and opportunities for technology transfer, we are slowly seeing our companies moving from provision of the basic services like catering, like driving, to high-end technical services in the sector like provision of geophysical studies, participation in the engineering designs and all this. So this is just to demonstrate to us that it is very important for us as the region to focus on local content. The same goes with corporate social responsibility. These companies, the investors, have come on construction of facilities, health facilities, education facilities, and these have been very key in promoting economic development within our regions. So this, we are privileged that this session has a mix of experiences from Uganda, Tanzania, from Kenya, and we are going to listen to them describing the strategies that we should be putting in place to improve local content in the region, some of the impacts of corporate social responsibility across the region, and what the value is in terms of skills development. I think we have someone who is going to speak to the value she has seen as a result of integrating our people in the engineering studies,
what value we get as states within the region. So without any further delay, I would like to invite Humphrey from the Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum to demonstrate to us some of the strategies that we can take into consideration as we develop these resources. Humphrey, 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, moderator. Usually they say ladies first, except if there is only one gentleman and the rest are ladies. So I have the privilege of going first. My name is Humphrey Asimwe. I'm Chief Executive of Uganda Chamber of Energy and Minerals. We're previously Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum. But as a result of the just energy transition and the need for us to be awake and aware of climate change issues and also make sure that we integrate the whole energy spectrum, we did go through a whole rebrand to Uganda Chamber of Energy and Minerals. Our mandate is fourfold, that our role is to advocate for and on behalf of the private sector. So we speak for the private sector. Secondly, we provide networks and opportunities for the private sector, as well as host events similar to this, where the private sector players can be able to showcase their capabilities, talk through their issues, develop synergies, and all the rest. Of course, providing also information, well-researched and well-documented information. If I could go to the next slide. Now, the moderator has done me a very good service and actually spoken to lots of the statistics that I wanted to be able to share out here. Because the truth of the matter is, when we talk about local content, it means, or national content, it means that companies can begin to reap the benefits of their resource before the resource even comes out of the ground. Having in place these kinds of regulation, if we could go to the next slide, that ensure that we have local content entrenched in our laws, ensures that there is socio-economic gain, there are business opportunities, the skills transfer, as well as policy alignment. Now in Uganda, our experience has been that any company that wants to take part in the oil and gas sector is required to have a national content plan. And that national content plan is monitored throughout the lifespan of the contract. Okay? And what that means is companies are alive to national content. At the very beginning, I should say that a number of organizations and a number of circles felt that it would be a bit of a disservice to require an international investor who is coming into our jurisdictions to be able to think national content. Because as we know, they say investment or money hates noise. And where there is noise about what are your national content plans and all these kinds of things, there was a fear initially that would drive away. However, experience has been that companies are looking for ways of giving back to society. Companies are also looking for ways to get a social license to operate, and one of the quick ways of doing this is adhering to the requirements of local content and national content regulations to be able to make sure that they are hiring from the local population, to be able to make sure that they are purchasing goods and services from the local population, to be able to make sure that they are giving back. Because the local population is not just looking out for a handout, but they are looking for a hand up. Then at the end of the project, how can the people be left in a much better place? If we could go to the next slide. So it's important that we have discussions around this. And in Uganda, we have the Petroleum Act that creates a legal and policy framework for this, for local content. The workforce target is very well known, 70% Ugandan by 2030 in the entire project. And then also procurement quotas are very clear to make sure that every good and service that can be procured internally or procured within Uganda is procured within Uganda. And as a result, they are what we call ring-fenced services that can only be accessed from Ugandan companies, about 14 services. Now I need to add this, that when we look at local content or national content across the East African community, different partner states have looked at it slightly differently. And I believe one of the ways that we need to be able to improve national content is to work towards harmonizing our national content regulation. I'll give an example. In Uganda, the definition of national content starts from a company that is incorporated in Uganda and goes ahead to adhere to the regulations of national content in terms of how many people are locals at the different levels or the different strata of an organization, what percentage of the goods and services are purchased from within the country, and things of that nature. When you go to Tanzania, it is slightly stricter, because in the Tanzanian setting, you'll find that the definition of a Tanzanian company refers to a company that has Tanzanian ownership. And so it is a good thing for us as partner states at some point to be able to sit back and say, how do we harmonize across the board? The second aspect that also needs to happen within the partner states is to work out a way of saying a kind of like a tiered or a layered way of defining national content, where if I cannot get a Ugandan company to do logistics, my second best option should be from within the partner states before I go out. That will move our East African community forward and will move us to the place that we need to be able to be. As we speak now, about $19 million has been utilized in the community, because you cannot divorce national content from community engagement. That where the oil and gas projects are taking place, it's important that that community as well benefits, and probably benefits in a preferential way, different from those who are in the capital. So for example, in the case of Uganda, you have the Albertine Graben that is in the western part of Uganda, and the idea is to make sure that how do the people in the Albertine benefit from this service, that farmer who has been growing tomatoes for donkey years and is about 2 kilometers away from the project, how can we help that farmer to be able to supply his tomatoes to this oil and gas project, and their life is at a better place? They get a hand up in the process. Not that they are treated differently, but because this project is within their locality, it's very important that we consider the community in this whole discussion. And one of our lessons that we have learned is many times as we've thought through local content and budgeted for local content and imputed the cost of local content within our contract cost for those who are submitting bids, the aspect of community engagement has been left out, and we walk up to it at a later. And when that happened, it was important to rethink the whole strategy. If we could go to the next slide. So, some of our lessons have been around community engagement. Next slide, please. Some of our engagements have been around community engagement, and others have been about making sure that the quality of goods and services that we are getting are actually improved so that they can favorably compete. What do I mean by that? That for goods and services that are locally sourced that were not originally to the oil and gas standard, it was important for them to have deliberate projects to assist companies, to assist individuals, to assist service providers to get to that oil and gas standards, to have the requisite certification so that they can adequately compete and provide solutions. So ladies and gentlemen, as I close, I know my time is up. I just want to leave these three thoughts for us. That if we are going to benefit from our national content, from the oil and gas, it's important that as the East African community at some point we seek through and have a harmonized position on national content. Secondly, we consider the idea of tearing it off such that you look for within the partner state. If you cannot find the good or service within the partner state, the second and most likely option should be within the region before you move on to outside the region. And that would be helpful for us to grow our national content. And then the third thing is that even as companies are being interested to come and invest within the region, national content is not just a handout, it is a hand up. It is a good thing to do and companies benefit from it, but at the end of it, it's important to also consider community engagement, even in their national content policies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Humphrey, for those very insightful comments and presentation on what we need to do. I think what stands out clearly is the need for us to harmonize the requirements across the region in terms of the definition, in terms of how we go about it. I think that's very key. And also secondly, the categorization of the definition at any state level, that is local content, then the next level to capture the EAC state, then we go to foreign. Those are very useful insights. Up next, we are going to have Dr. Acheliana Mtingela, who is going to give us a presentation on the impact that Tanzania has seen as a result of corporate social responsibility, but focusing on the ECO project and the TPDC. Dr. Yoruba.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Acheliana Mtingela. I am a senior economist at the Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority. I'm here in Tanzania. I'm delighted to be here today and participate as a presenter in the 11th EAPCE'25. I work with the regulator in the Department of Regulatory Economics, but you will wonder why my interest in corporate social responsibility. I have a PhD in rural development, and corporate social responsibility is one of the key factors that assist in those forgotten areas, in the rural areas. My presentation today is a study that we did, me and my colleague, Mr. Wilfred Makalosi. We did a study to assess the impact of corporate social responsibility initiatives in Tanzania's petroleum industry. First, we thought of doing the two case studies of TPDC and ECO, but unfortunately we could not get enough data from ECO to facilitate our study. So we managed to do the case of TPDC alone. So specifically, the study was undertaken in order to understand CSR's role in economic, social, and environmental development, as well as to provide recommendations for policy as well as for business opportunities in Tanzania and in Africa at large. Next slide, please. that in 2014-15, there was over 506 million Tanzanian shillings invested in only 4 projects. But there is a diversity in subsequent areas where we see low funding but investment in many projects per year, up to 14 to 22 projects in 1 year. So there is a variation in investments in those corporate social responsibility projects. And we could see that there is a large focus on projects related to education. We see building of schools. We've seen that they have invested also in healthcare and in good governance. There were other projects with fewer funding and fewer in number in terms of environmental projects, water and sports. Initially, they invested a lot in the regions where it's a key hub in Lindi and Twaya, where the gas originates, and towards Pwani and Dar es Salaam. But we could also see a diversification of and extending to other regions, including Tanga, Kagera, and even in Zanzibar. But we see that there's a challenge in balancing high-value projects like the ones in 2014-15, where they invested a lot of money in few projects, and a broader impact, where they feel the need to invest in many projects at a time. The data that we collected was limited, that we could not easily translate it into the lasting benefits of how this corporate social responsibility helps the local communities. So we could not see any long-term impact. It's because of the data probably. We could not see any long-term impact in terms of employment. And we observed low funding allocation in some of the projects. And those initiatives could not ascertain that they were sustainable. Next slide, please. Now, this brings us to our conclusion. We see that CSR positively impacts several sectors in the economy in Tanzania, especially the sectors that we mentioned had more funding, like education, good governance, and healthcare. But then, we do not have a clear policy enforcement, because Tanzania does not have a CSR policy, a framework that particularly guides how CSR should be performed or conducted in these different companies. So to optimize CSR benefits, it's important to have a structured national CSR framework. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what does this mean? Next slide, please. What does this mean to policymakers? It is important to establish and strengthen CSR policy. We have to follow the core principles of CSR, the principles of sustainability, accountability, and transparency. We also have to engage the local communities. Stakeholder engagement is very important, so that when you bring a project that the community really needs, and align the CSR framework with global standards. This will improve accountability and best practices. We also need to improve monitoring and impact measurement. As I said before, we did find data on how these projects were invested in certain sectors, healthcare, etc. But there is no impact measurement that is being made to understand how these projects really impact those communities. And also, for policymakers, we also have to foster government-private public partnerships, PPPs. This will help for the long-term sustainability of those projects. Next slide, please. What does this mean for businesses? Businesses can leverage in CSR. They can align CSR with government for priorities to gain policy support. But how do they do this? We first have to have that CSR policies, CSR frameworks in order for the businesses to align with their local priorities. And they can invest in sustainable projects such as the renewable energy projects, vocational training for the local communities that will have a lasting impact in those communities. And they can use CSR branding in order to gain community trust and for corporate reputation. Businesses can develop public-private partnerships so that they can drive long-term economic impact. With that said, I will conclude my presentation, and I appreciate for your attention and for your interest in this topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. We still have another round of applause. Yeah, I think we now have empirical evidence on the role of CSR in community development, and that brings out a number of aspects, and it's clear from the study that CSR has positive impacts. However, there are recommendations, and one of them which I want us to remember, at least as we leave this place, is we need to put in place a policy framework to guide how this CSR is done. Thank you again. Our next speaker is Engineer Linda Muza, and she's going to speak to us about the value of inclusion of government officials in the engineering activities of these companies. Linda, please, 10 minutes.
Good afternoon all. I'm Engineer Linda Muza. Permit me to introduce my co-presenter who should have been here, Engineer Delbo Kenya from the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, currently the Senior Pipelines Engineer. This should speak to the collaboration between the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development and the Petroleum Authority of Uganda to enable us to plan, implement, and develop accordance to plan. Next slide, please. This will be the layout of our presentation. I'll not go through it. We shall just get to the next slide. I'll run through the introduction of what EAPCE means to us. EAPCE is our major fast midstream petroleum infrastructure project in Uganda. It's 1,443 kilometers long, and thankfully it's going to pass through Uganda and Tanzania. We thank the government of Tanzania for permitting us to pass this pertinent infrastructure through your country. As we were developing the policies and the plans for EAPCE project, we found it pertinent as government to have representation throughout the developmental processes of this project. So keeping that in mind, our leadership placed officers within the project, officers and companies. In this case, we were working at the EAPCE', next slide please, which is the engineering, procurement, construction, management, which leads to the commissioning of this project. During this collocation, we were able to go through feed validation. For those that are not privy to feed, it's front-end engineering design of the project. We had to go through 3D model designs, hazard and operability study developments. We attended factory acceptance tests and also held technical discussions with experts that were actually designing the project. Next slide, please. These next slides will show photographic evidence that indeed we were part and parcel of the activities that we're going through. We were given assignments as officers to enable that at least government interests were actually part of the process as we're looking at the design of the project. Next slide, this is us presenting what we've learned. This is us attending most of the factory acceptance tests. Next slide. This is us having discussions with the technical teams, both from Tanzania and Uganda. Also, that's on the left-hand slide. That was the EAPCE packaging. Next, so for just so that I have more. So this was majorly a capacity building exercise for the government officers. Next slide, please. I'm going to really go through the lessons learned because this is what brought us here for us today. We had to learn the importance of managing interfaces, those internal and those with government entities, and the potential impact that they will have on the project schedule and the quality that we could not underestimate. Then also we had to learn and understand indeed that EPCM processes are not looked at in a linear way as anticipated by our laws. So you get to see overlaps between the different phases, you'll get to see different interfaces, and looking at the project schedules, you'll actually get to learn indeed that so many activities take place at the same time in different areas. So when it came to the project deliverables, they had to be well defined, especially at the interfaces between different contractors. You will find that the person designing the pipeline has to be in line with the one designing the generators, the electrical instrumentation, the telecommunication. It is all intertwined. So we thank God we got to learn most of that along the way. We had to learn system redundancies. We had to check in with our climate activists. We had to listen to them. Some of them had pertinent ideas that we actually included into our project design. So we even introduced solarization along the eco project, which spoke to some of their concerns. During this process is the best time to ensure during the design that national interests are definitely catered for. So I'm hoping we did our country proud in this case. And also the design activities covered very many engineering design disciplines, and so it's very pertinent that for us as the engineering section, we actually got to learn so much information from this. I can't delve deep into that because it will take a whole day. The next would be our recommendations. Next slide, please. Yes, our recommendations, which would be government entities usually spend a lot of money in the training of their staff, which is really good. However, whenever it comes to an opportunity of project design activity and it avails itself, we would really recommend that governments actually do attach their government officers to actually train alongside the experts so that they actually get the on-job training so they can understand why we planned this, why it's implemented this way, why it's developed this way. It's pertinent that staff with the right qualifications be nominated to actually participate so that they can actually get the maximum benefit. Also, governments should prepare the nominated staff well. So in others have some technical sessions with them before the attachment in order to actually get the benefits. Or in order to share knowledge during that period, we were able to get in touch with our colleagues back home, share ideas, so that it's not a one-way center. So we will have different sessions with them. They'll give us ideas on what to include and if it will actually be able to be part of the design process, and thankfully ECO would actually be able to take part. When it comes to the factory assessment tests, these are really pertinent because this equipment is going to be taken back to the ground, and site acceptance tests will actually be part of the process. If you've not been part of the FAT, it will be very difficult for you to understand the SAT, the science acceptance test. With that, I would like to next slide, show that this presentation is dedicated to our fathers who have worked tirelessly to ensure that we are here and we are who we are today. That's Engineer Stephen Emmanuel Gatese Hidalgo and Mr. Pastor Masengere. In the same juncture, I'd like to thank the ministry, the visionary leadership report of the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, all our colleagues that have worked with us, and I'd like to challenge all the other governments here. Please do ensure that your government officials are going through the process to enable the monitoring and supervision. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Can we give her another round of applause? Thank you very much, dear Linda. I think listening to Linda speak, there is no doubt we need to encourage our people to be part of the operations of the oil and gas industry or energy projects. And for me, this is for two reasons. One is for knowledge transfer. From the experience we've seen in the sector, it is going to be very hard for an engineer graduating from the University of Dar es Salaam or University of Nairobi, hitting these oil companies, getting a job there and being able to understand the requirements, the designing, in as much as they have been trained into engineering. So this is an area where we need to focus on to upskill our people. But also, the other aspect is on sustainability of the industry. These are investors, but we are the people that are here. And we are not only looking at the projects that we have today, we are prospecting for other projects coming. So involving them is really something that we need to take with us home. Our next presenter is Ms. Ayan Omar, and she's going to speak to us on how, again, we can leverage the oil and gas industry or the energy, the resources that we have in the region to build a workforce that is able to integrate into these services and achieve delivery. Welcome. You have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon. My name is not Ayan Omar. My name is Sally Bono. But I'm holding court for Ms. Ayan Omar, who unfortunately could not be here with us today due to various reasons. I will try my best to give justice to this presentation, like I know she would have. But I'll start by telling you a bit about myself. So my background is in geochemistry. I also have an MBA in strategic management, and I'm a certified project management professional. So today I'll be speaking about empowering East Africa's energy future, building a skilled collaborative workforce for sustainable growth. I think from the first presenter, the common story that I have heard is about how we need to build our skills as the East Africa community. And I think this is something that we need to do, and if we need to do it, then we need to do it now. And I think one of the things that I can mention is maybe during the era of energy transition and all the phase about energy transition, a lot of investment has gone into the green energy model. So as oil and gas professionals, we've been left with our own frontier basins with very little investment coming out from the foreigners. So what does that mean? We should be able to do the exploration by ourselves. We should be able to have enough skills where we can go into our frontier basins and do exploration. So what do we need to do? We need to upskill our professionals. So I'll go through from the introduction all the way to the conclusion, and basically I'm hoping that by the time we're done, we'll all have a thing or two. That's something that we need to do. So I'll talk a bit about the East Africa petroleum industry, and I won't go a lot into what is happening in the East Africa industry because I think a lot of presentations have been made And we've seen the strides that have been made by the East African countries in regards to their exploring their petroleum resources. So some countries are in the phase of production, others are in development, yet others are still in exploration. But we still have a lot of untapped hydrocarbon reserves that we need to explore. And these resources are very crucial for our economy and equally for the growth of our GDP. So we need to have skilled professionals who are able to navigate this sector. As we know, this sector requires highly skilled professionals as much as it is financially intensive. So we need to look at capacity building and also regional collaboration. So what we did is we looked at the challenges and the opportunities that are there and we divided them into something called we call it the East Africa Energy Landscape SWOT analysis. And we looked at our strength, which we have good government support and increasing government support in the energy industry. We have regional collaboration, good regional collaboration. Someone just presented about EAPCE'25, which was a collaborative project between the Ugandans and the Tanzanians. So that we already have. We looked at the opportunities, which is we can leverage on our national experiences, and also we can integrate the digital tools that we have for training. The weaknesses that we have are mostly financial, limited the skill gap, and the gaps in our regulatory frameworks. The threats that we have are in the climate change policies. So with the climate change policies, most investors are not investing in frontier basins. So that leaves us with resources that we are not able to exploit. And then we also have competition from alternative energy, where much of the focus is being put into the green energy, which is a good thing, but we just need to have a just energy transition. So how can we build a collaborative ecosystem? So first, our local universities. I don't know if you are like me that you went to school and when you graduated and you went to the industry, you found that whatever you had been taught in school is very different from what you're being told to do at the workplace. If you're like me, then it means that our local universities are the place where we need to start. We need to ensure that the curriculum that we have in our universities are aligned with the industry needs. We also need to leverage on international oil and gas companies to ensure that as they come here, we tap on their technical expertise. Someone talked about on-job training. We ensure that we have our professionals working with those professionals from the international oil and gas companies so that we are able to get the skills that we have. Then our government bodies also need to help us by streamlining our regulatory frameworks and mostly for the national content policies. Then regional organizations are very important in ensuring that we are able to collaborate and work together. Like I can give an example. We do not yet have a lab at our company, but Uganda has a lab. So whenever we need to do our analysis, then we run to Uganda to do our analysis. So I think that is a kind of collaboration that we require, as opposed to looking for labs outside, yet you have labs in the East Africa community. So what kind of training programs can we have for sustainable growth? So we can have the mentorship opportunities where we have the senior people who are more experienced, training the young people or the junior people just from the university to ensure that once you retire, you leave behind the skills that you have, you just don't retire with your skills. We can have more field trips to exploration sites to ensure that whatever we have learned theoretically, we are able to bridge it with what happens in the field or the theoretical and the practical part of it. Then the other one is hands-on experience where we learn on the job. So we need to do more of the jobs. We need to involve our staff in more of the exploration work so that they learn on the job. The other thing is we need to integrate digital tools for expanded access. And some of these digital tools are e-learning tools. There are lots of e-learning material that we can integrate to enable our people to learn. So why is it important for us to build capacity? Because we need to enhance our technical expertise as professionals so that we are able to do, carry out the exploration and production activities as professionals in East Africa. We also need to promote regional collaboration. I like what one of the presenters said, and as what one of the presenters said when he said that if you do not have a skill that you require, if it's not available, let's say for example in Kenya, and there's someone in Uganda who has that kind of skill, then we can always get the skill from Uganda. Then we need to foster interdisciplinary skills for a just energy transition. And then we also need to support leadership developments. And what are the benefits of this? The benefits are we'll have a more resilient and self-sufficient energy sector, and our economy will progress, and we'll also have a culture of innovation and sustainability with responsible resource management. So those are just some of the emerging skill sets. They are the Industry 4.0. This is basically technology that we need to incorporate in our work. As a wise man once told me that technology will not replace the people using technology. It is the people who are not using technology that will be replaced by the people using technology. So that is something that we need to keep in mind. And even as I conclude, we need to train and upskill our people so that we can strengthen the East Africa's petroleum system. And this can be done through a collaborative approach of capacity building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please give her another round of applause. I think you fitted very well in the role of presenting for our colleague. Thank you. Yeah, it's very clear from her presentation that we need to continue upskilling our people in these aspects. We need to build regional collaborations, this time in training, instead of maybe taking someone to the UK, we can take them to another facility within the region to expose them to some of those technical aspects if the facilities actually permit. But also we need to link our education systems or institutions to the industry so that we can produce work-ready graduates. Thank you very much. Let's now go into our next presentation that is going to be given by Ms. Rose Nyangesa Naliaka, and she's again going to demonstrate how corporate social responsibility has been a key driver for sustainable development in Africa. Rose, you have 10 minutes.
Good afternoon. Yeah, my name is Rose Nyangesa. And I would like to go to corporate social responsibility in the petroleum sector as a catalyst for sustainable development in Kenya. Actually, I'm not going to go through it in details because Dr. If you can remember her name, went through the same and it's kind of similar, so I'm not going to go through much details about it. Next slide, please. Yeah, the objective of this was to explain, to explore how corporate social responsibility practices in the petroleum sector contribute to sustainable development in Kenya. I also had another objective where was to examine the role of CSR in mitigating social and environmental impact, and also to identify how CSR can support energy transition and economic empowerment. Next slide, please. So the methodology I adopted was through research approach, where there was data collection, using interviews in industry experts, surveys, and review of CSR reports from petroleum companies, and after that I had to analyze the tools. Next slide. The results obtained were for one was environmental impact mitigation, where adoption of cleaner extraction technologies, biodiversity, conservation initiatives like reduction of carbon footprints and reforestation and sustainable extraction techniques
Another one was economic empowerment, where job creation, skill development programs, and local supply engagements is necessary. Also community engagement, where education and healthcare initiatives and structured development are important. And also another result I think was energy transition support, where investment in renewable energy projects and energy efficiency programs are so necessary in CSR. Next slide, please. In conclusion, the academic perspective, CSR is important for balancing economic growth with environmental and social responsibilities. Also, effective CSR practices foster community trust and long-term sustainability. And the petroleum sector has a vital role in supporting Kenya's sustainable development goal and energy transition. And in this case, I think it also cuts across the region, because CSR in all petroleum sector within the region, I think it's kind of similar. It has a similar importance or similar role in sustainable development of petroleum sector. Next slide. In policy implication from the government perspective, first was regulatory framework, where the government should advocate for policies that promote CSR integration in petroleum sector. And in public-private partnerships, it should be encourage collaboration with petroleum companies and community development projects. Also, in incentives for sustainability, the government should offer tax breaks or subsidies for companies investing in cleaner technologies and local initiatives. And in monitoring and evaluation, they should implement mechanisms to ensure that transparency and accountability in CSR projects is established. Next, please. And on business opportunity for private sector, business opportunity in private sector perspective, that is to encourage the private sector. They should have investment opportunities like cooperation on renewable energy project and CSR initiatives, market differentiation like enhanced reputation through sustainable practices, community partnership and joint ventures to promote local economic development, and technology innovation like development of cleaner extraction technologies and energy efficient solutions. And so I don't want to type so much because it's lunchtime. Yeah, next slide is saying thank you so much for listening to me. Thank you very much, Rose. Another round of applause for Rose. You've really done so well on time. I think we are coming to the end of the session, but just to recap a few things, then I'll call for maybe 2 questions. I think it has come up very clear that it's important for us as a region to focus on those approaches that will promote local content in the sector, and this can be achieved through ensuring that there is adequate employment of our people, especially where they have the skills, utilization of our goods and services, technology transfer aspects, capacity building and enterprise development of our companies to be able to become even more competitive, to work within the region and across, but also integrating our education institutions to respond to the needs of the industry. Then on the part of corporate social responsibility, it has been demonstrated that there is high impact if we look at this. So in as much as in most cases, given our agreements, there are no recoverable costs, but we need to have policies that guide how this can be done. That is the summary of the session, but I would like to call for at least 2 questions before we close, if any. It looks like we are all at the back. Can someone help take the mic? Thank you. Right at the back. Any other person?
Thank you. This is John Francis, geophysicist from Kenya. if we think of a way of doing something regional within the East Africa with respect to the CSR, that's the production sharing contract in Kenya, mirror what we have in Uganda, what we have in Tanzania, and our other players. Because that's where now we are going to be comparing apples to apples. Secondly, I'm looking at data. I'm a bit biased to statistics. If we don't have enough data into what really CSR and the local content entities are, we might not get there. But we need some synergy in terms of regulation with respect to the disclosure. I believe some of the data that we have with respect to the operations are only private, one to the government agency and two to the operator. So we'll get a way of having a platform to share the data that really impacts on our subject for discussion. So I might want to really have this escalated to another level whereby we have a new definition of what local content means and what CSR should be about with respect to our baby, the dirty fuel, like they're calling it. But I believe we really need to do something for us now to have a regional broad spectrum to bring this kid home and bring it in a way that my boys and colleagues there on the panelists will really appreciate that that other player within the industry is really going to blend within what we have with respect to the contractual platform. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. There's a lady right in the corner that side. It looks like another gentleman coming up. Since they are seated close, maybe. I don't know if we still have time. Please. Please get her a mic that is working.
I was going to say I'm loud now. Thank you very much for the excellent presentations and for the very able moderating by Betty. I think, and I'm not attempting to answer your question, but it's somehow, when are we graduating from CSR to ESG? Because that is also banding, because we have the GRI sustainability reporting standards. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The gentleman, then the lady here, and that will be all.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Edwin Dubé from EULA. I have a question. First of all, I should congratulate all the presenters who have done a very good job. My key question is we want to develop the timeline because we have come to the point that we have said we need to develop amnesty, local and national content in the AEC law. I don't know, we can take it as a homework. I don't know if we can have the timeline. And also I have a suggestion that because we understand all this investment, when we can invest in EAPCE law, they have a target for local content from their nations.
Serikali si waamuzi wanaibeba sifa
So I have a suggestion if we can develop like a one database for the suppliers, service provider, EAPCE block.
Thank you very much. Lastly, the lady in front here.
Thank you for this opportunity, despite it being
I saw a lot about empowering Ugandans to work in these corporations for them to benefit. I'd also like to understand, is there a target for women as well? Because this local content also needs to have a level of gender diversity. Thank you. My name is Shanira from Tanzania.
Thank you very much for those questions, and it's indicative that we've been very attentive. I see that majority of them are takeaways that the EAC needs to adopt in terms of policy, like when we talk about building synergies, setting up a platform where we can build synergies on how to take forward the implementation of corporate social responsibility programs, but also the move from corporate social responsibility to ESG. I think these are going to be empowered by policy if they are going to be adopted across our countries, but also the harmonization, which is very key, harmonization of local content on the ESC block, and we go away from Tanzania's local content policy says this, Uganda's, Kenya, and all this. I think those are also going to be very key, but I would like to give a chance. Humphrey, you have a question on community development, and a quick one from, and another one from the lady, then everyone will have to comment on the close.
Thank you very much. So on the issue of diversity, equity and inclusion, from the private sector point of view, in Uganda we've been pushing for what is called the gender equality seal, that all companies involved in the oil and gas sector, and also in mining, because we cover oil and gas and mining, are looking at a target of 40%, okay, 40% women. Some are on the way to that, others are just beginning the journey, but at the end of the day it is to be able to have that inclusivity. And so this is a private sector driven initiative. It's not necessarily in the law, but I stand to be corrected, maybe it is. On the issue of the reason for harmonization and making sure that as the East African bloc we think together, we need to understand that different countries are at different places in their oil and gas journey. So Uganda very soon, probably 2026 after first oil, will get into the operations phase of oil and gas in Kingfisher and Tilenga for those two projects. What that means is that a number of the companies that have been involved in this current phase will have their contracts either end or their contracts will be transitioning into something completely different. If we have a regional outlook on local content or national content, then we can be able to say that if I have the skill in Kenya or if I have the skill in Tanzania, I can then support in Uganda as we get into another phase. If I have the skill, Kenya is beginning, they put out blogs and all that, they're getting to the whole exploration and that. You have companies just across the border that have the experience, that have the certification, that have the staff, the skill set. How about, being able to share those across the board? In addition to that, a lot of training has happened, and somebody talked about skilling. A lot of skilling has happened for various skill sets that were judged to have, were low at the very beginning. An example is welders, okay? So yes, with EAPCE being, taking shape and all that, welders are being employed and being used for that and all the other piping work. However, there is a projected saturation, okay, of that skill set, meaning that for us as a private sector, we're thinking, where do we put these extra people? And we are looking around. We are looking at Mozambique, for example. We are looking at Namibia. We're looking at Tanzania to be able to say, look, I have 2,000 certified, international certified welders. Okay, instead of them sitting around and being jobless or the project has ended, how do we get them within the system, okay, to be able to find work and all that? So that is the purpose for the regional outlook, the regional thinking, that we'll be able to work together, move together, and yes, you can tier it if you want. First priority, partner state. Second priority, region. Then on and on and on will be able to benefit. Otherwise, it becomes unfortunate if one country is moving very fast and the other one is, staggering along. At the end of the day, the security issues were not very attractive to investment just because of our neighborhood. That is why we need to think as a region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know if anyone has any comment to make. Okay. Yes,
I
please.
have a slight comment concerning, I think it's Madam Machipa. So you asked when are we transiting from CSR to ESG? But I'll comment shortly about Kenya personally, because I think in Kenya we are still in exploration stage. And so I can't be certain about when we are going to transit exactly to.
Hello.
Yeah, I can't be so certain about that because of the stage we are currently. Yeah, but maybe my colleagues here can those who have advanced more, like Uganda, Tanzania, I think they are much far a little bit, they can have more knowledge on that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think Humphrey has done us very well putting together all this. I can't keep you here anymore. I want to thank you very much for being such a good audience. I think we've earned the lunch and let's go for it. Thank you very much. Yeah, let's have a group photo.
Group photo. Let's go back.
Hajabadilisha bei? Ni kule kule.
Kule kwa jana. Peleka wapi? Badilisha bei kuna bei.
Yaani sasa Kilimanjaro wanapeleka nini?
Kulikuja hapo.
Karibu hicho nayo beti yako.
Kwa nini sasa umebeti?
Anko. Simoni. Nikupe ukopi.
Yule kaondoka.
Leo. Unajua bwana, ni nguo unaelewa nini kinaongelewa. Unaelewa nini kinaongelewa ndio unapata shida. Yaani unafuta mawazo.
Nini? Kamera. Sasa ni sali moja tu.